Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today we are going to cover day 2 of the best standard decks with Final Fantasy's release. We're going to look at what's working, what's maybe not working, some kind of brews. We're slowly starting to get actual win rate stats in, so we're going to take a look at those. The focus of this video, if a deck's stock, like stock domain, stock omni, stock mono red, we're not going to look at it in this video. For example, this week, or at least this first couple days, Mono Red's the highest win rate deck. It's the exact same deck it was before. So keep that in mind. We're going to be focusing on either updates to existing decks, new cards coming in, or just new decks themselves. There was the MTGO challenge, Standard Challenge this past day. So that one there was split finals between Stock Domain, Stock Omni. There was we'll put it in quotation marks, gruel Corey deck, but is basically mono red with Questing Druid. It did have Opera Love Song, the new 2-mana Impulse. That was also in there. So that was kind of the only new card in there. It was a lot of mono red. It was a lot of just kind of stock decks in the challenge. Could be just card availability, just being a new set. But we'll kind of take a look at what's working, what's not. Again, we are getting a bit of smaller sample size. I do have to keep it at platinum, so there's a little bit. We'll cover it with the first deck we're looking at. I don't want to say questionable deck building choices, but some choices that could leave a little to the imagination, or just, you know, maybe they're ahead of the curve. So we'll kind of jump in. We're going to get the data from Untapped, what you see on the screen. Link for Untapped, if you want to use it, is in the video description, as paste all these deck lists and timestamp them as well. Hopefully get best of one out tomorrow. There wasn't really many decks showing up for best of one that were new. Again, it was just a lot of people playing stock decks, I think, as they accumulate their collections. In terms of meta, still seeing Prowess most played, about 20%. As we kind of approach up the ladder, it goes from 20% to 21% at Diamond to back to 19. So it seems like most of the sweating is happening in Diamond rank in terms of like the Prowess gamers themselves. But Omni's got a pretty substantial win rate for the day. Some of this could be also just smaller sample sizes that kind of come in. So we're going to look at, even with this, with best of 3, it's only a shade under 10,000 games, so people are still kind of accumulating wins. So the first deck, 63%, 76 games, so non-zero amount of games played. Mono Black Demons. Okay, I can dig this, but what jumped out to me right away? Dark Confidant. Okay, so the once very powerful card, we tried it during early access, but we built our deck with like spree cards and a lot of smaller casting cards, so we didn't take as much damage. This one is playing Dark Confidant with Unholy Annex Ritual Chamber. For those unfamiliar how this works on the stack, it sees both sides converted mana cost, unlike when it's on the battlefield. You flip this with Bob, or Dark Confidant, for those unfamiliar with the nickname, you take 8 damage. In a meta that is mono red and prowess, it's a little bit risky. I think Demon Wall would be a natural kind of fit in this place. Saves you mythics and also works with Unholy Annex. Otherwise, the deck's pretty like reasonable in terms of what it's playing. Quasari, you have the Bloodletter combo with Unstoppable Slasher. Darkness Crystal's an interesting one. So cost reduction on your black spells. It exiles creatures if they die from your opponent's side and you gain life. So just kind of playing into the removal suite. And then for 6 mana, you get to kind of reanimate one of those creatures. I do think what you probably want is some copies of Cut Down in the main over maybe like 2 Bloodletters. And like I said, Demon Wall is probably better here. The other thing here, Mudflap Village, you're playing 2 of these that limit your casting spells, and it only brings back Deep Cavern Bat, so this is something you'd probably want to cut as well. Similarly with the Cavern of Souls, you're not like all in. Maybe if you're on Demon Wall you can keep it, but you're probably better off just playing more Soulstone Sanctuaries kind of mixed into there. This is 22 lands. You could probably also play 1 or 2 more lands in this deck. Painful Quandary, again, not a card that's necessarily playable. You have Ancient Vendetta, Stonebrain kind of effect. Probably Stonebrain's a little bit easier on the casting. Malicious Eclipse, good sweeper. Strategic Betrayal deals with Graveyard. So you have your discard, you have your removal package. I think it's reasonable. Just some odds and ends. Demon Wall seems like the card that you want to play over Confidant here. Abzan Yuna. So this is a Reanimator style deck. This is a curve to scare your friends. So this one here, you're playing the Overlords always kind of skew this, but Overlord of the Bale Mark's your 2-drop. You have Overlord of the Hauntwoods as your 3-drop. With this deck here, you're looking to ramp. You also have Virtues as some more removal in the 2. You could play Temporary Lockdown in the main if you're concerned with some of the aggressive decks, but the core of the deck is to self-mill, put cards into your graveyard, and then Yuna, Hope Aspire, do its best Zerm Depression, and Reanimate. So not all in on necessarily like Summon of the Knights round or Summon Bahamut. Like Virtue's just good value as a removal spell, and then it was Reanimation effect. You have Ley Lines as removal. You can obviously reanimate your Overlords. Summon Titan helps enable. Hits your lands. Rides in, another way to trigger up the Beanstalk. Seeing some Starting Towns in the mana base. I do think for a deck like this, you probably don't want Starting Town. This is more of like an aggressive card, I would say, just being a pain line. You're probably better off just playing more of the Verges, just to kind of save you life. Authority for the aggressive decks, Duress for Hand Hate, Graveyard Hate, High Noon for the Prowess decks, Terra Sunder, Maelstrom Pulse, just flexible removal options. Split up as a sweeper, again, could be Temporary Lockdown, and then you have Tranquil Fillback, Artifact Enchantment, and Graveyard Hate. So Dimir Midrange, obviously a stock deck, but we're seeing some copies of Cecil being played, 3 copies in total. This one's at 63%. So Cecil, just reasonable attacker, prevents your opponent from really wanting to block, which then kind of works nicely with the game plan of cheating in Kaido, or in this case, drawing cards with Gix. Going Gix over the Enduring Curiosity instead. Again, another call here where you are kind of high on your 4s. Curiosity does draw you cards without losing the life, which in an aggressive meta could be reasonable. But seeing Cecil kind of slot into here, a card that if you do flip plays nicely, just gaining you a bunch of life and making your creatures indestructible. Sideboard's pretty stock just in terms of what we've seen in the past, but this one's here is just kind of highlighting where we're seeing some cards. You're usually not going to see like an entire new deck kind of spring up. It's usually, okay, here's an established deck, especially early on. People are plugging in cards here and there to kind of see what works, what doesn't. So stock Izzet Prowess gets the update, and we're seeing some copies of Vivi Ornator being played. So in the slot of Slickshot Show Off. So we've seen splits of Draycatcher, Slickshot Show Off, kind of trimming down on the Monastery Swiftspears. We showed a version yesterday that was on Vivi as well. Or no, it was just a little bit more mid-rangey with the Merfolk 2-drop, I forget its name, that you can offspring and it gets you some card advantage with Notice Town, and then the Sauna, just kind of more mid-rangey version of the deck. But Vivi is very strong. There's a combo version of the deck as well we'll cover right after this. This one's at 60%. But mixed mana, whenever you cast non-creatures, you get to ping them as well. So lets you kind of chain through spells. Plays really nicely with all what you're naturally trying to do with cantrips, stuff like that. Monstrous Rage basically adds 4 mana to your mana pool if you target Vivi, which is kind of nuts. Stock ups obviously refill your hands for value. I do think this is a deck that you probably do want a couple starting towns. Just giving you cleaner mana, I think, is beneficial. The sideboard's pretty stock. You see the slick shots when you need to go more aggressive. So interesting to see this as a sideboard card. Fiery Annihilation, especially if we're seeing more equipment starting to get played, if the Boros deck does pop up. Just removal that also exiles an equipment, so 2 for 1 your opponent. Seems pretty strong, all considered. So the next deck is the combo version, and this was doing some work earlier on. There's a few like content creator streamers, like on the ladder at least, you know, Diamond Mythic rank, putting up like 5-0s, 7-0s. But this one here is only 52% right now, and how it works is combination of Geralf, the Fleshwright, Vivi Ornator, and Agatha Soul Cauldron. So if you put a Vivi under the Soul Cauldron, any of your creatures with counters get its ability to pay 0 and add mana. Geralf makes you zombies each time you cast a non-creature spell other than the first per turn. And this one here, each subsequent zombie puts counters. So your zombies then allow you to just kind of keep making mana. Each zombie is a new instance of Vivi's ability. So you can kind of just chain through your deck. Keep casting spells, keep drawing, making more zombies. And eventually what you'll do is haste them out with Bitter Reunion. Highway Robbery is just kind of draw discard effects, looting. And then your fair game plan is obviously Core Steel Cutter. Rebel Salvo is another effect with like the equipments that just It gets a cost reduction, so 5 damage for 1 mana, kind of akin to Monstrous Rage in that effect. All right, this one's going to be contentious. Selesnya Chocobo. I said Chocobo in the last video, and all my comments were ripping me apart. I've never played Final Fantasy, so forgive me. My friend sent me a video on how to pronounce it. Chocobo. I like saying Coco Loco or Chocobo, but Chocobo. So this one's at 58%. So it's a green-white birds deck, kind of counters matters. So this one here, you have Saz's Chocobo, and then you have the Miner's Guidewing, you have Healer's Hawk, just cheap basic creatures. Llanowar Elf helps you ramp. Innkeeper's Talent plays into the counters theme. Sheltered by Ghost obviously is removal, that plays nicely. Valley Quest Caller in here, that is a lord for your birds. You got the Traveling Birdie. You want to play like obviously the black one or the serialized one in your budget standard deck. But this one's really strong in early access. I was quite impressed with it. I don't know how well it stands up in standard just yet because the 2 toughness, there weren't many shocks or burst lightnings going around in early access, but 3/2 here, get to play spells that are birds or lands from the top of your library. You get the extra triggers, so landfalls trigger twice. Haven Interrupter is kind of a pseudo counter spell, and then you have Bart's and Boko that allows you to kind of be a virtual fight style effect and be as little as 2 mana for a 4/3. Starting Town should be played instead of Thran Portal. That would be one of the suggestions I would have. Otherwise, the deck looks pretty tight in terms of what it's doing. Probably don't want the Lush Protocol in your Llanowar Elf deck. You don't want your lands coming into play tapped. I would just play like another first potentially. Against the discard decks, you have Wiltleaf, Ren for the Grindier matchup, Split Up for the creature mirrors, Stone Brains for combo, Rest in Peace for Graveyard Hate, High Noon for your Corey decks, Heritage Reclamation, Flexible Removal, Pop Patch against like the Mirror decks. The Ambrosia, I can see it just resetting some of your ETB effects, so like your Avens or your Barts could have some utility when you're kind of looking at it. So another deck, this one's 3717. This is by Dunk Zones. They were 487 Mythic with it. So obviously the Mice deck, but what it's seeing is the Opera Love Song. So I just wanted to more show this for this card here, as some of the red decks are starting to pick this up. It's basically a Ren's Resolve style effect. You get to instant speed do it until the end of your next end step, but it's a flexible card where it lets you either go offense or kind of keep the gas going. So you can either give up to 2 creatures plus 2/0. Obviously this triggered Valiant with Double Strike. It's very powerful in that effect. Or it just provides card advantage, something that the decks sometimes lack. This is another deck that if you need to, you can play Starting Town. Mabel's in here, and then pretty like clean sideboard just in terms of dealing with most stuff. One deck I'm not going to go into deep, but just kind of give people a warning. Golgari Self-Mill. This was the highest version in terms of win rate. People are kind of into this diamond weapon, basically 2 mana 8/8 that can't take damage. And then you have cards like the X-Death Void Warlock kind of mixed in, Town Greeter as a new self-mill enabler. This deck's just not doing well right now, 44%. There's many in the 30% range. Deck usually suffers from the fact that there's so much incidental graveyard hate because of Omni and stuff like that, and you're just not winning as fast compared to some of the other decks. And lastly, we don't have a huge amount of stats for it right now. Obviously, stock Omni is doing well. I just want to kind of show that some folks are trying Summon of the Knights round in the Omni decks. So this is another kind of backup plan with the Abuelos, so you can reanimate that or the Omni. So this lets you just kind of go offense. It's another way to win the game with Omniscience. So this one's not doing the combo. It's just a card you can either cast off Omni that closes the game out very quickly, or it is a card you can reanimate and just stabilize the board. Otherwise, pretty stock, draw, discard. We see the 4 lockdowns main, full stock ups main kind of mixed in. And then this one just has the ability to kind of transform outside of the combo into just more of a fair mid-range control deck. So if your opponent brings some recipe, stuff like that, you just pivot and then have them have a lot of dead graveyard cards, where then you have things like Overlords, your Voices, Conceals, Phases to kind of stabilize you there. So that is it for today. Like I said, I'll be back as many times as needed to cover the first few days of the format, giving you updates as we kind of go along. But let me know what you've been playing, what you've been liking, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching.